One morning, I found dirt, actual small clumps of dark earth, on the hallway floor, like someone had walked through mud very carefully and tried not to leave a trail, but failed. I thought maybe I'd tracked something in myself. I tried to rationalize it. Until I saw one of my kitchen drawers half open. Not wide. Not obvious. Just slightly open. And inside, some of the things were rearranged. Not everything, just enough for me to notice. A fork where the spoons should be. A knife turned the opposite direction from all the others. It felt like someone was playing with the details of my life. Touching things. Testing boundaries. Seeing how much they could change before I reacted. I told myself I would catch them if they came back. So I bought one more camera. A better one. A model with higher resolution, better night vision, audio recording, wider angle. And I installed it in the hallway. Inside the house this time. Facing the bedroom door, the living room, and the entrance to the kitchen all at once. The first night, nothing. The second night, nothing. The third night, my phone buzzed at 3:04 a.m. Motion detected. If you're still with me at this point, take a second to support this channel. It really helps. Hit like, leave a comment telling me what you think is going on so far, and keep listening, because from here on, things get worse. I didn't get up right away. For a few seconds, I just lay there, staring at the lit-up screen of my phone, hoping it was a false alarm. Then the notification came again. Motion detected. Hallway. I opened the app. At first, I didn't see anything. The hallway looked empty. The door to my room was closed. No shadows where they shouldn't be. No movement. Then I realized the door wasn't closed. It was open just a crack. Wide enough for someone to look through. And as I watched, the door moved. Slowly. Inch by inch. Like someone was pushing it with the tips of their fingers. I paused the video, my heart racing, and looked over at my bedroom door. Never imagined a simple noise at 3 o'clock in the morning would change everything about the place I lived, the safety I thought I had, and the assumptions I made about the people around me. I've always been a deep sleeper, the kind of person who could sleep through storms, loud traffic, and even neighbors arguing outside. But that night, at exactly 3:07 a.m., I woke up with my heart pounding, as if someone had shaken me awake. What woke me wasn't a sound at first. It was a feeling. The air in my room felt different, heavier, colder, like someone had opened a door to let something in that didn't belong. It was as if the air itself was warning me. Then I heard the metallic scrape. Slow. Sharp. Repetitive. I lay still for a moment, listening. It didn't sound like an animal or the wind. It sounded like metal hitting dirt, over and over, with a rhythm that didn't match anything natural. I got out of bed slowly, walked to the window, and lifted the blinds just enough to see without being seen. And that's when I saw him. My neighbor. He was in his backyard, half buried in moonlight, digging frantically. Not gardening. Not planting. He was digging a deep hole, the kind you only make when you're desperate to hide something, or desperate to find something. His movements were violent but controlled, like he knew exactly what he was doing and exactly why. He stopped every few moments, looking around with wild eyes as if expecting someone to jump out from the dark. Then he'd swing the shovel again. Moonlight caught the sweat on his forehead, making his fear visible even from where I stood. I watched him far longer than I should have. My brain kept trying to find a normal explanation. Maybe he lost something valuable. Maybe he was dealing with a broken pipe. Maybe he couldn't sleep and decided to work outside. But none of those excuses fit the intensity on his face. Eventually he stopped digging. He leaned over the hole, hands on his knees, breathing like the effort had drained every bit of energy from him. Then, without filling in the hole, he walked back to his house, moving slowly, like every step mattered. When I woke up later that morning, I needed to see if the hole was real or if my mind had invented the whole thing. So I walked outside casually, pretending to check my garbage bin, my lawn, anything that gave me an excuse to look toward his yard. But the hole was gone. Not filled in badly. Not covered in a rush. Gone. Perfectly flat. No loose dirt, no footprints, no sign of anything being disturbed. It was impossible that he had done all that work in just a couple of hours. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Every time I saw him, he avoided my eyes. He walked faster than usual. He flinched at small noises. He had the posture of a man who was afraid of the world. And then, 5 days later, it happened again. I woke up at 3:03 a.m., the same cold heaviness in my room. The same sensation that something had shifted. And then came the metal scrape. I moved to the window quickly this time, already knowing what I'd see. But it wasn't the same. He wasn't digging. He was talking. Arguing. Whispering harshly into the air, pacing back and forth, pointing at the ground like someone was right there arguing with him, but there was no one there. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. He suddenly stopped moving, turned his head, and looked directly at my window. His expression wasn't madness. It was fear. Pure fear. He stared for several seconds before backing away from the spot he'd been pointing at, shaking his head as if trying to erase something he had just seen or heard. I dropped the blinds quickly, but his terrified face stayed in my mind. The next morning, I bought an outdoor camera. I didn't want to confront him, but I needed answers. I installed it facing his yard, hidden behind a plant, and waited. That night, at 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the app, expecting to see him digging or talking to the air again. But instead, I saw him on his knees, clawing at the dirt with his bare hands. He wasn't digging anymore. He was panicking. He kept glancing over his shoulder, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then something appeared in the left corner of the frame. A figure. Tall. Entirely still. Dressed in dark clothing that blended into the night. It didn't step into view like a person. It emerged from the darkness like it had always been there. My neighbor froze when he saw it. He pointed toward my house, not randomly, not vaguely. He pointed directly toward my window. The figure slowly turned its head toward me. Its face, if it had one, was hidden in the shadows. Then it stepped back and vanished. My neighbor covered the hole with his hands in a desperate rush, kicking dirt over it before running into his house like something was chasing him. I must have replayed that video 20 times. The figure wasn't reacting to him. The figure was reacting to me. If you're still watching this, support the channel, comment your theories, and stay with me until the end. What happens next is something I still can't fully explain, and your engagement really does help me keep telling stories like this. The next night, I tried to stay awake. I left lights on, walked around, drank coffee, anything to keep myself alert. But exhaustion eventually dragged me under. At 2:58 a.m., I woke to frantic knocking on my back door. 3 sharp hits. A pause. Then 3 more, faster, more desperate. I moved slowly toward the noise, every instinct in my body telling me not to open that door. But something in the knocking, something terrified and human, pushed me forward. I looked through the peephole and saw my neighbor. Sweating. Crying. Shaking. I opened the door a few inches and he forced himself inside, slamming it shut behind him. "You're not safe," he whispered. "They've been inside your house too." I told him he was scaring me, that none of this made sense. But he grabbed my sleeve and pulled me toward his house. His living room looked like a bunker. Curtains taped shut. Locks on locks. Furniture shoved against windows. And on his desk, hard drives, notebooks, cameras. He plugged in a drive and opened footage. "They come every night," he said. "Every night they search my yard. But they're not looking for something I have." He clicked another file. The figure entered my yard. Then it stood outside my window for 10 minutes. Then it reached up and opened it. I watched myself sleeping inside. Completely unaware. "They don't want money. They don't want anything from me," he whispered. "They're looking for something inside your house. Something they believe is hidden there." My breath caught in my throat. He showed me more footage. Each video worse than the last. The figure entering my house in total silence. Standing in my hallway. Pausing outside my bedroom. Leaning toward my door like it was listening to my breathing. I couldn't deny anything anymore. He leaned close to me. "I tried to dig where they dug," he said. "I thought if I found it first, I could stop them. But I can't. And now they're getting bolder." When I left his house, he grabbed my arm and whispered one final warning. "They're not done." I went home shaken. Locked every door. Every window. Turned on all the lights. And sat awake until sunrise. I wish the story ended there. But some nights, at 3:07 a.m., I swear I still hear the digging. Sometimes closer. Sometimes so close I think it's coming from underneath my house. And sometimes I wake with the feeling that the air in my room has shifted again. Like someone was there. Watching. Waiting. Searching. If you're still here with me, thank you. Make sure to support the channel, it truly helps more than you think. Leave a comment telling me what you think they were looking for, and keep watching more stories. I'll keep sharing everything that happens next, as long as you're here with me. Because I don't think this is over. Not yet. Not for me. And maybe, not for you either. A few nights after all of that happened, I told myself I was overreacting. That's what we do, right? We survive something terrifying, and then we try to shrink it down into something small enough to live with. We tell ourselves we were tired, stressed, maybe a little paranoid. We convince ourselves that fear is a kind of illusion. But fear isn't an illusion. Fear is a message. And I kept ignoring it. The police didn't help. I showed them some of the footage my neighbor had collected, the grainy night vision clips, the shadowy figure under my window, the way it slipped inside my house like it had a key. They called it inconclusive. They said it could be a glitch. A reflection. A prank. They told me to secure my property and get some sleep. So that's what I tried to do. I changed the locks. Installed new cameras. Bolted the windows. Double-checked every entry point before going to bed. For a little while, things were quiet. Too quiet. No knocks. No scraping. No alerts on my phone. I almost started to believe it was over. My neighbor's house stayed dark most nights. Sometimes I'd see a light flicker in one room, or his silhouette pass briefly behind his curtains, but he never stepped outside. Not during the day. Not at night. And then something shifted again. It started small. I'd wake up in the morning and feel like something in the house was slightly off. A chair that wasn't pushed in the way I remembered. A door left open when I was sure I'd closed it. A faint smell of soil near the back door. I paused the video, my heart racing, and looked over at my bedroom door in real time. It was shut. Completely shut. I turned back to the screen and hit play again. The door in the recording creaked open just enough for something darker than the hallway to appear behind it. Not a shape. Not a face. Just a darkness that didn't match the rest of the scene. A kind of concentrated shadow. Then, from that darkness, fingers appeared. Pale. Thin. gripping the edge of the door. They pushed it enough for the gap to widen. And then the hallway camera cut out. Not glitched. Not frozen. Just stopped. The recording resumed 8 seconds later. In that gap, the door in the video was now wide open. I watched myself come out of the room a few hours later, acting like nothing was wrong. Passing through the same hallway. Walking through the same air that something else had moved through before me. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, I tried calling my neighbor. No answer. I walked over to his house, rehearsing what I would say. How I'd ask him if he'd seen anything strange recently, if his cameras had picked up anything. I told myself that maybe he was still tracking whatever was happening and just hadn't told me. I knocked on his door. No one came. I knocked again, louder this time. Nothing. I peered through the sidelight glass beside the door. Most of the furniture was still in place. The curtains were still taped. But there was a thin layer of dust on the table near the entry. And on the floor, near the door, some scuff marks like furniture had been dragged away recently. My stomach dropped. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. It was as if he'd vanished. I told myself maybe he'd gone to stay with family. Maybe he'd finally had enough and moved. But deep down, I knew it didn't feel like that. It felt like someone had stopped a movie halfway through and never pressed play again. That night, I set my cameras to save every recording and upload everything to a cloud backup automatically. If something happened to me, I wanted there to be a record. I lay down in bed fully dressed. I didn't expect to fall asleep. But I did. And I woke up to the sound of digging. Not outside. Not in the yard. Underneath. At first I thought it was my imagination amplifying every noise, but I could feel it. A faint vibration echoing through the floorboards, like someone, or something, was working its way under the house. I got up and stood still, listening. No metal this time. Just the sound of earth being moved. Slowly. Calmly. Like whoever was doing it didn't care if I heard them anymore. I opened the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. One of the cameras recorded me as I took each step, moving as quietly as I could. The sound seemed louder now, almost directly beneath my feet. When I reached the living room, it stopped. Completely. I checked the windows, the front door, the back door. Everything was locked. Everything looked untouched. For a second, I started to believe I'd lost my mind. Then I saw it. Near the base of the wall, where the floor met the plaster, there was a thin crack that hadn't been there before. Barely visible. Like the line you get when something swells and shifts beneath the surface. I stared at that crack for a long time. The next morning, I went outside and walked the perimeter of my house, checking the foundation, the soil, the crawlspace access. On the far side, near the back corner, I found it. The ground there was slightly lower. Softer. Like it had been dug up and then filled again in a rush. The grass was disturbed. The soil was darker. And right beside that area, hidden under a thin layer of dirt, I saw a footprint. Not mine. Too long. Too narrow. Pressed deeper at the toes, like the person had been leaning forward. I took a picture of it. Then I did something I'd promised myself I wouldn't do. I started to dig. The soil there wasn't like normal yard dirt. It was compressed in strange layers. Some portions were loose, like they'd been moved recently. Others were hard-packed and stubborn, like they hadn't been touched for years. After a few minutes, my shovel hit something solid. Not rock. Not wood. Something that sounded hollow. I wiped the dirt away and saw the edge of something metallic. Rusted. Rectangular. Maybe a box. Maybe a container. My heart hammered in my chest. I thought about opening it. But as soon as my fingers wrapped around the edge, I heard it again. The digging. This time, it wasn't muffled. It was close. Not under the house. Behind me. I turned quickly, expecting to see someone standing there. There was no one. The yard was empty. The windows were still. The street was silent. But the sound kept going. Shovel into dirt. Slow. Heavy. The exact same rhythm I'd heard that first night. Except, it wasn't coming from anywhere I could see. It was all around me. Like the ground itself was remembering. I left the box there and backed away slowly, my skin crawling with the feeling that I was being watched from places I couldn't track, behind windows, under the house, from cameras that weren't mine. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the living room with every light on, watching the live feeds from each camera on my phone and my TV. Every creak in the house made me flinch. Every shadow looked like it was one step away from moving. At exactly 3:07, the hallway camera detected motion. The notification popped up on my phone. I didn't even need to look to know something was there. But I looked anyway. At first, I saw nothing. An empty hallway. My bedroom door slightly open, the way I'd left it. The living room behind me visible at the edge of the frame. Then, very slowly, a shape appeared at the edge of the bedroom door. It didn't enter. It didn't lean into view. It just thickened. Like the darkness itself was gathering into one place. And then, a hand slid around the edge of the doorframe. It was the same as the last time. Pale. Thin. Only this time, I could see more detail. The knuckles. The tendons. The way the fingers curved slowly, pressing into the wood. I realized my own breathing had gotten louder. The microphone picked it up in the recording, turning the silence into an eerie soundtrack of my own fear. The hand disappeared. I waited for the camera to cut out like before. But it didn't. Instead, the bedroom door in the video began to close. Slowly. Silently. Until it shut completely. And at that exact second, I heard something behind me in the real world. A soft click. The sound of one of my windows unlocking. If you're still watching, this is your moment to breathe. Support the channel if you can, and tell me in the comments what you would have done. I know what I did. I don't know if it was brave or stupid, but it's the reason I'm still here telling you this. I didn't turn around right away. I kept my eyes on the camera feed, watching the closed bedroom door on the screen, and let my ears tell me where the noise had come from. Another soft sound. The slight squeak of a window sliding in its frame. It was the kitchen window. I stood up as quietly as I could and turned off the TV so the glow wouldn't give away my exact position. The house suddenly felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Step by step, I moved toward the kitchen. Every horror movie I'd ever seen played in my head. Every story about people who went to check on a noise and never came back. But this wasn't a movie. And it wasn't someone else's story. It was mine. I stopped just before the threshold and peeked in. The window above the sink was open about 3 inches. The lock was turned. I knew I had locked it before. The blinds were still down, but the lower slats had been pushed inward, as if something had pressed against them from the outside. The night air leaking in through the gap felt colder than it should have been. I didn't see anyone. But I felt them. That same invisible pressure in the air. That same crawling sensation under my skin. The sense that something was occupying the same space as me, just beyond the edges of my senses. Slowly, I reached out and pushed the window down until it closed. I turned the lock with shaking fingers. Then I pulled the blinds all the way up and looked outside. Nothing. No one in the yard. No one at the fence. No one in the shadows between the houses. But in the distance, in the direction of my neighbor's empty home, I saw a light. Faint. Unsteady. Like a flashlight moving from room to room. The house was supposed to be empty. I watched the light flicker across the upstairs window, then disappear. I checked my phone. No new footage from any camera pointed that way. The only cameras that might have seen something, had probably stopped recording the day he vanished. I stood there for a long time, staring at that house. I wanted to go over there. To see if maybe he had come back. To ask him if he knew what was happening now. But I didn't move. Because for the first time, I had a different thought. What if the light wasn't him? What if whoever had been in my house had decided to go back to where this started? I went back to the living room and sat down again, watching my own house on the screens, inside and out, waiting for something I couldn't name. Hours passed. The sun started to rise. And for a little while, the world felt normal again. No knocks. No digging. No shadows thickening in doorways. Just the quiet, soft light of morning. But the crack in the wall near the floor was slightly wider. And outside, the patch of earth near the corner of my house looked even more disturbed. The box I had started to uncover was no longer there. The soil was freshly flattened. As if someone, or something, had decided I wasn't supposed to see what was buried there. Or worse, that whatever had been buried there didn't need to be in the ground anymore. If you've stayed with me through all of this, thank you. Make sure you're subscribed, leave your theories in the comments, and keep watching the next stories. Because I have a feeling this isn't where it ends. Not for me. Not for this house. And if you ever wake up at 3 in the morning to the sound of digging, don't assume it's coming from outside.